You are listening to Shaoni, Born from the Light, by Iowan, read by Kevin M. Connolly. Chapter 4: The Silenced Heart. Did you ever think of someone you hadn't seen in a long time, just moments before he called you on the phone? Or had a hunch about the right answers to a question, a one-in-a-million shot, and yet you had it right? Did you ever feel something was wrong without there being any apparent reason, only to find out later that indeed it was? Imagine all this information came from a place that you could get access to, except everybody always forgot to tell you about it. Aniola knew that, for Shaoni to become a wizard, he had to learn about this other source of information. That's why he told him the next story. Did I ever tell you about the Ragoons? Aniola asked, as soon as they sat down by the fire. The Ragoons were small fairy tale-like creatures who weren't very smart. They only had a very small brain and couldn't really think for themselves. Fortunately, as with all things in life, nature had provided them with a solution. All of the Ragoons were sort of connected with a central brain, the brain that did all the thinking for them. That was all right, said the brain, for it knew the answer to many questions, and if ever there was a question it didn't have an answer to, it had this ability to think and then come up with an answer. So all was well in the world of the Ragoons. The brain felt very self-assured, being the only one ever to take decisions, and the Ragoons never complained as they themselves didn't have enough brains to think about it. And so it happened that, almost every morning, the Ragoons could watch the brain parading along the streets with an air of someone very important. The brain loved to parade and show off in the streets as it was rather vain. That may not surprise you, as the brain, after all, was the one who had all the answers, and the Ragoons had no one else to turn to anyhow. That is just how it was. If you had a problem, ask the brain, they said. The brain knows. The brain always knows. Oh, yes. The brain was smart. Smart beyond anything the Ragoons had ever seen or heard about. Beside their own little brain, the Ragoons also had a little heart. A heart which allowed them to feel. Oh, most other creatures in the Ragoon world wouldn't say it was much to write about. Only a small heart, barely worth mentioning, but there it was. They had a heart, and with it they could feel. The little heart, however, sometimes created problems for the brain. You see, sometimes it happened that the heart felt that one of the brain's decisions wasn't right. Of course, it couldn't really argue about it, as hearts score very poorly in the field of arguing, but still, sometimes one of these Ragoon hearts would just feel that the brain's answer wasn't right. Occasionally, a Ragoon would even go to the brain and tell it about these feelings. "Tell me about it, then," said the brain, in its self-assured and arrogant way. "Why don't you just tell me about these feelings of yours?" That is what the brain always did whenever it felt one of its decisions questioned. "Feelings?" it said. "What are these feelings? What kind of solutions did they ever bring you? What are they based upon? Tell me why you feel the things you feel, and I will listen to you. Come on, tell me," said the brain. But of course, never could the heart answer, because that's not how the heart worked. The heart didn't reason. The heart only felt. Reasoning was the domain of the brain. "Stupid Ragoon," the brain would then say. No good ever came forth from your feelings. Why don't you just go back and sit in a corner somewhere to listen to your heart's feelings and leave all of your problems unsolved? The little Ragoon would then feel hurt and quietly shut up. This is how it had been for many eons. In the end, the Ragoons had learned not to question the brain anymore and to doubt the feelings of the heart. After all, they said, the heart doesn't contain the answers. The heart doesn't know. The thing they completely forgot about, however, was that the heart did know. It even knew a lot of things that the brain knew nothing about, and that the brain knew just as well, but it jealously guarded this secret. Of course, it didn't want the Ragoons to find out about it, did it? Imagine it was to walk along the streets one day, and a Ragoon came up and said, "Hi, brain. Nice day today. And by the way, I decided to follow my heart's advice yesterday. Sounded better than yours." The brain got sick in the head just thinking about it. No, that was something it couldn't allow. Something it wouldn't allow. Something to be prevented by all means. One day, however, a Ragoon found an old book. What the heart knows, 100 things the brain will never tell, it said on the cover. The book spoke about another source of information, another way to find answers. As the Ragoon didn't really know what to think about it, he went to the brain to get an opinion. "This book is nonsense, utter nonsense," proclaimed the brain, but the Ragoon could feel how stressed it was. "Why do you always get so irritated when we ask you something about the heart?" the Ragoon insisted. "Irritated? Me? What are you talking about?" uttered the brain, pretending not to care in the least. The Ragoon, however, could feel that something was wrong. He could feel fear. Yes, indeed. It was as if the brain was afraid. "I can feel it," the Ragoon said to himself. "I can feel the brain's fear, and I can feel something is wrong." Ever since the Ragoon had started to read this book and found out about the heart having something to say, he had constantly been confronted about it. These heart feelings were everywhere. For every decision the brain took, the heart always had something to say too. The Ragoons, however, had never paid attention to it. The brain had always told them not to. But now the Ragoon had learned to feel. Often, when the brain would tell him what to do, the Ragoon would feel the brain's doubt. Not that the brain would show it, of course, but the Ragoon could clearly feel it. Often, also, it could see the brain wondering about a decision it had taken, or feeling insecure about the outcome it might have. The heart didn't seem to have this problem. The heart didn't wonder. The heart simply knew. The Ragoon turned his attention back to the book to see what else it had to say. But the book was hard to understand. It was as if it spoke in riddles, as if it didn't want to be understood. It said things like, "The brain may lead you to answers, but never to the truth." Or, "The brain deals with the problems of the physical, but is blind for the wisdom of the worlds beyond." Or even, "The brain will never grasp the vastness of all that is, because it is itself only a part of it." The Ragoon read and reread the words of the little booklet. Then suddenly it dawned on him. The words had finally sunk in. The brain could never lead you beyond the physical.